Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. Well, I'm on take 7, I think. Mia's in a really barky mood. I haven't even been able to get past 2 minutes into this intro. And and I've been fussing with the camera because everything looks purple because we're working today with violet and I'm also wearing a violet top. So hopefully the colors aren't going to be too bad for you and my chair keeps rolling back. Okay, so violet. Well, if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that violet is not my jam. I'm not a huge violet fan. As a color to use on its own, I use it to manipulate other colors. But in saying that, there's no reason why, I shouldn't show everything about violet. And it's one of those things where you can either love it or hate it. So I want to go over the colors that I'm going to be using and why I chose these types of colors. So I've got DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics. Oh, and I also, to save time, I put the colors up here. DAMFA means DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics. DAT is DecoArt Traditions. And DAA is DecoArt Americana. So I've got Primary Magenta, Quinacridone Magenta. Then in the Traditions, Quinacridone Violet, Red Violet, Dioxazine Purple, DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics, Dioxazine Purple, and then the DecoArt Americana Lavender. With the big bottles, unless the packaging is changed, the big bottles don't have the color index information on them, but you can go to DecoArt's website and download the technical specs, which gives amazing information. The color name, the actual product number, the series, the pigments that are in it, the light fastness, and the opacity. So I wrote those in here as well. With the violet, oh, where's my color wheel? Sorry. Violets can, it's not just a matter of taking red and blue, because we all know depends on the red, depends on the blue. But between red violet, to me, it can be anywhere from on the bluish side to the reddish side, and it's anywhere in there, depending on where it sits on the color wheel. The red violets, the violets that lean more towards red, are all not even at the permanent alizarin crimson part. They're right about here. Okay? Whereas the violets that lean more towards blue are right about here. So the actual true violet, when we get to working with Dioxazine Purple, we'll look at the true underlying color to see where it sits on the color wheel. Because my violet that I make it with permanent alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue. That's how I make my violet. But I want to show you, where am I going to put this? I want to show you the paints so that way you can make your own informed choices. So we'll start with Primary Magenta. Oh, white. I forgot white. I found some old Traditions paints, and I'm going to be using those bottles up before going into the tubes. All right, DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics. So this is a nice, more of a transparent color. It's great for mixed media. And that's why I have the media line is more for mixed media. Instead of adding water, I get a more consistent result with these because they're already made up. And then just pick up white. Should have blotted my brush first, but I know this not going to go too far. So this color here is PV19 Pigment Violet. It's a really pretty color, and then you have to decide where it leans on the color wheel. So what you see on the monitor may be different than what I see. Does this lean more towards red or does it lean more towards blue? Add a little bit more white to bring the value down even more. It also depends on lighting. So if you're looking at your color chart under warm light, naturally your color charts are going to look more orange. If you look at it under daylight, which is 6500 Kelvin, your color mixtures are naturally going to look more blue. If you have the ability to change your lighting, or next time you're going to go and buy some lights, you want to go for a cool white. Or you do one bulb that's a warm white and one bulb that's a daylight bulb. But you want to try to balance it out. Okay. So I'm going to wipe up the excess, blot my brush. Now this is where it gets interesting, especially not so much with the actual violets, but these ones here. Now I'm going to go to Quinacridone Magenta, which is PR 122. And although it's a pigment red, as soon as I add the white, you may be able to see it now, as soon as I add, get a little bit more light there so there's not so much shadow. Where are we here? As soon as I add the white, you'll see the true underlying color. So when you have trouble figuring out where a color leans towards a color wheel, compare it to something else. This one is very obvious where it leans on the color wheel. So that's going to be your pop quiz question. Your pop quiz question for each of the colors: where do the colors lean on the color wheel? From what you see. And there is, well, unless you say it leans towards green, there really is no wrong answer, because it all depends what you see on your end. Blot the brush, pick up more white. And I'm going a little bit further with the values because I want to see how far they can go. And there's a reason for that, because once we get to dioxazine purple, that's going to be the one that goes, wow. So this one here, I didn't quite get to go as far as I wanted to, but it could be because I added too much white. I don't think so. I think it was pretty even with the values here. If I add more white here, I don't know how much I'm going to get out of it. Try to pick up the same amount of white each time, and you'll never be able to match it exactly. All right. So now we go into Quinacridone Violet. Now, Quinacridone Violet for Traditions is the same pigment number as Quinacridone Magenta in the Decor Art Media Fluid Acrylics. In Fluid Acrylics, it's called Quinacridone Magenta, PR 122. Decor Art Traditions is Quinacridone Violet, PR 122. Well, let's see what we get with that. It looks completely different. Now, to be fair, we need to let it dry. I'm going to pick up some white. Now, where does this look like it leans on the color wheel? And I'll wipe the brush, add more white. Now, you guys have a lot of pop quiz questions. So the first set of pop quiz questions is, as we go through the videos, what you see on your screen, on your your display, where do the colors lean on the color wheels as you start seeing them? And now your next pop quiz question is, as a brand, DecoArt, why would, no, that's already as a brand, because normally you would think of, if the pigment number is the same, you'd have the same name. Well, if this color is Quinacridone Magenta and this color is Quinacridone Violet, and they're both the same pigment numbers, how come you're getting two different kind of paints? Why are these colors different if they're the same pigment number? So that's your next pop quiz question. A lot of pop quiz questions in this one. Okay, blot the brush, pick up white. So it has a relatively the same pigment power. Looks like we'll be able to get the same amount of mixing. Oh, a little bit stronger. Quinacridones are usually pretty intense, but as soon as you add white, ugh, they go kind of plain. All right. So as we move down, now we're going to get to red violet. Now this Decor Red Violet is PV19. Pigment Violet. Hold your horses. What's going on? This goes back to the same question. If the Fluid Acrylics Primary Magenta is PV19 and the DecoArt Traditions Red Violet is PV19, why are the colors different? That's your pop quiz question. Now this one here is a little stronger. It's a little stronger. You may be saying, well, if we're looking at choices for violets, and you're looking at these and you can see, I'm not going to give you the answer, you can see where they lean on the color wheel. What do you choose? Does that mean you have to have these violets here, and you have to have these violets here, and you have to have all these violets because you need them to be able to shift it? No, you don't. I'm going to, in another video, I'm going to demonstrate, again, making your own violet, which is much easier to shift. But as you're working through this, I want you to take all the violets that you have, all the violets and magentas, because violet leans towards red, which is where you get these types of pigments, and then you have the violets leaning towards blue, which you have these types of pigments. I want you to create your charts like this, and then you'll be able to make a more educated choice as to what you want to keep in your limited palette. And like I said before, I use dioxazine purple and permanent alizarin crimson as my choice for my violets. So with the next one, I'm going to be using dioxazine purple. This is what I used to use in my limited palette, and it was more when I was working with oils, because I was doing a lot of reverse glass painting, and this was a key color. Now it's very dark. Wet my brush a bit, pick up some white. It is so intense and so vibrant. It's not really my goodness. It doesn't really fall along with the style of painting that I do. But that doesn't mean you can't use it. If you like this color and it falls along with more of your style, then go ahead. But one thing if you're a landscape painter, dioxazine purple is a really nice color to have, because when you're making a sky color, if you take a little bit of ultramarine, we're going to get to that in another video, you take a little bit of ultramarine blue, white, ultramarine blue, a little bit of dioxazine purple, and then a speck of burnt sienna. Oh my God, it makes the most amazing mauve color, a dusty mauve color, which is beautiful for skies. You know how you have that dusty atmospheric look in the background? Oh, it's gorgeous. You can see that this particular color goes a lot farther. It's very, very vibrant. So now we're going to go. Now, why did I bring out the fluid acrylic dioxazine purple? Well, we've already proven that the paints, even though they may have the same name and same pigments, they could look different. So I wanted just to do an experiment to show it. And the first thing I get off this one here is a little bit more transparent than this one, obviously because it's fluid. But it is the same pigment. But it's a little bit more fluid. And we have a little bit more fluid, it's a little bit more transparent. Actually, that looks... No, I know it is the same pigment, and I know I'm getting the difference because I picked up more white here. Okay, so with this one here, I'm not going to bother going down because we already know it's the same pigment. So when you're choosing your pieces, so if you're working with landscapes, you may want to work with something that's, this one here, it's got it as transparent, but it's such a thick, just to show you, it's such a thick consistency. It holds its shape. But with the fluid acrylics, which is nice for layering, which is also transparent, it's a little bit more fluid. So as to a choice between the two, if you want to get both, fine. But you can always add water to this to make it thinner. But you can't thicken this one up unless you let the water evaporate, then what's the point? So if you had to choose one, I would go with the Traditions, and then you can thin it down if you didn't want to have both. The goal is basically to eliminate colors, get only what you need, but get the best that's out there, instead of going to cheap paint. Decor Americana Lavender. These are nice colors for base coating. If you're watching me, you're past the level of being just a hobby craft painter. You've done more, not to say more craft painting, but you're past the point of just base coating and just doing a couple little things. You're actually into color and painting animals, and you're painting landscapes, and you're doing more complex mixed media. You're kind of past using these paints for that, but these are great for again, base coating, because they're a lot more economical. So if I was to turn around, if I needed to do a painting, let's say I was doing a portrait, and the whole tone of the portrait more had a violet hue to it, I would do a background base coat gesso, then this, and then I could overlay another transparent layer on top of that. These are just a lot more economical. These are also good for paint pours as well. Just because you may be, even if you're a beginner painter, but you're going into more professional paints, there's no reason why you just can't save some money and just base coat with this. But don't go out and buy a whole bunch of craft paint thinking you're going to get professional results with color mixing, because you won't, because you don't know what's inside. And look at that. It's not as strong. Because there's a lot of filler in here, and that's the purpose. That's how they make it a lot more economical. But if you're just starting out and you haven't got anything, and finances are an issue, then you can go with these types here. Just go with the primary colors and try to stick with working with colors that you can easily color mix. If you go to with a color that's Simply Clean Violet Blue, well, Simply Clean Violet Blue means nothing. Violet Blue might give you a hint as to where it leans on the color wheel, but will be a challenge for color mixing using these. And I think I just rinsed my brush. Yeah, I did. So let me just pick up a little bit more violet, because this won't go very far. So this will give you a good understanding as to the colors. And you know what? While I'm here, let me do this right. Let me do my blue, my ultramarine blue, and my permanent alizarin crimson now. Whoops. Oh, shoot. I just spewed. Okay, I'm going to have to leave that. I just spewed paint. I'm not quite used to these tubes. I should be, because the Americana Professionals are the same way, but for some reason I just don't squeeze these right. Here we go. Ultramarine blue. Let's write it down over here. So Deco Art Traditions, ultramarine blue, which is PB29, and permanent alizarin crimson. I always get the numbers back. PR177. I always get that number mixed up. My mouth is rented today. So with ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, you can turn around and you can, because you're mixing the colors, you're going to get them. You're going to get them in, it'll either be a bit more red or a bit more blue. It'll primarily be more blue, more red, because permanent alizarin crimson is so strong. But it's a much softer purple. And this is more. See, to get that, if I was to use dioxazine purple, I would have to take dioxazine purple, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and some white to get something like that. But I can get it easily with ultramarine blue, permanent alizarin crimson. And then we can shift it. So if I'm going to take the value, okay, and then if I can add a bit more blue to it, take a bit more white. Okay, so I'll go over here. So it's still a violet, but it leans more towards blue. Now if I take that same mixture, add more red to it, See? Go back to the original mixture. Add more blue. Where we're going to get into some really interesting mixes is where we come in and we make some violets using different reds and different blues. Okay, then take some white. But you will never get, by creating the mixes, you will never get something as vibrant as this, because these are all single pigments. Except for this one. These are all single pigments. But this is more my style of painting here. You just have to be careful when you're using, depending on the alizarin crimson you're using, you have to be careful because, you know, well, I'll just use the decor one. The pigment is so powerful. You can easily be overtaken with red. So there you go. Alrighty, so you got a lot of pop quiz questions. Where do you see, as we go, where do you see the colors leaning on the color wheel? And why are colors that have the same pigment numbers two different colors? For example, PV19 for these two colors, two different the pigments are different. PR122 for these two colors, pigments are different. Okay, so those are all your pop quiz questions. Your homework assignment is going to be to take the violets that you have, magentas and violets, whatever you have. You're going to single pigments on top, and then you're going to create your value scale working down, and you're going to ask yourself the same question. Where do each of these lean on the color wheel? And if you have any that have the same pigment numbers, as to why are those pigment numbers the same where the colors are different? Alrighty, so I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. I want to see your pictures. You can't post pictures into YouTube, so although the videos are posted there, I'm not doing any commenting there. Head on over, go to the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to the description, click on either the community or the Facebook. That's where I'm doing most of my reviews and critiques. Go in there, post your picture, and post your question. Please don't ask a question specifically to a color mix you've done unless you post a picture, because I can't interpret what you've done. I have to be able to see it. Alrighty, so hope that you enjoyed this, and there's a lot more lessons. Oh, hopefully the microphone isn't picking up the whoosh of this. A lot more lessons coming up, including 2 challenges. So until I see you in those lessons, stay inspired.